This is the Build Zone podcast.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome back to the podcast for the second time. He was on not too long ago. He's on a very short list of, we call it Two-Timers Club, right? With Two-Timers. And Mr. Ryan Gaiss from Document Crunch. Ryan, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Michael. Excited to be back. Thank you for having me again.
It's very prestigious Two-Timers Club. It's a very short list of people that have been on two times. So for those that maybe don't know who you are or not familiar with Document Crunch, tell us a bit about yourself. Tell us how you came to work for Document Crunch and what are the unbelievable things that Document Crunch can do for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again. I'm very surprised that you wanted to have me back again. But good to be back. So my story, I started working at a general contractor as soon as I graduated college. So I've been a project manager for a while. And right around 2020, so post-COVID era, during that COVID era, is when I jumped to construction tech. And I've worked for a handful of construction tech companies prior to Document Crunch. I was at Kojo, which is a procurement platform for trade contractors. And now at Document Crunch, we are a contract intelligence platform for all contractors, general contractors, and trade contractors. And what we're solving for the industry is bridging this knowledge gap of what is in these construction contracts, especially helping contractors review and analyze their contracts and understand their risks leading up to signature, so before they sign up for any project, and helping them understand these risks, evaluate them, and then after signature, so after they've been awarded the project and after both parties have agreed to the contract, then empowering everybody to fully understand what their contractual obligations are when they are executing the job on site. So this is a tool that really helps, like I said, bridge that knowledge gap between somebody in the field, like a project manager or superintendent, that isn't, trained to understand like legalese and like some of the information in these contracts to better understand what their obligations are, but then also have a tool that helps them like gather answers in real time. And I can get into like all the additional stuff that we do, but at a high level, that is what Document Crunch can do for contractors.
Why do you think that Document Crunch is so important to a company? Whether it be a big GC, a small GC, why do you think it's so important?
Yeah, I think I want to start with the general contractors first, and then we'll move to the trade contractors because I see like two different opportunities for the most part for both of them. With the general contractors, I see number one, these like prime contracts are getting even more complex by the year, right? I see a lot of contracts now that I'm demoing the product and I'm working with contractors across the country, but they're very complex. Some folks are still dealing with just the standard AIA forms, which is great, but private owners they're manipulating those forms. They are changing some of the terms and legalese that's in there now. So simply having a tool that is identifying the risks or the risky provisions, I think is incredibly helpful, especially if you're a general contractor and you don't have in-house counsel to help you with this process. And especially in the case where you're a general contractor and you're outsourcing this work and sending it to a third-party attorney to review, I think this can be an incredible tool to bring some of that activity in-house, to be able to evaluate your own contracts. And that's the first piece of it. And I think in the grand scheme of like, I guess the opportunities with this type of platform, the project side and enabling the project teams to better understand what's in the contract, that's where the big opportunity is with general contractors. Because the trend that we're seeing, and it's been this way for forever, for project teams and project managers, it's not their game to understand like
Right.
legalese,
Right.
right? Like they're not trained to like fully understand this complex language, which if you were to ask an attorney, like it's designed to be complex, right? Um, so I think that's the major differentiator for a PM or for a contract or a big general contractor in general is just giving them a tool so that their project managers know the contractor better than anybody else, so that they can stay compliant, and they're not doing anything outside of the rules of the game, right? Or the contract language. So if there is an issue down the road, they know that they're playing by the rules per se.
And then,
So
so because for those people that might be listening not know, but what are some things like document crunch would help with, PM that may not know the legalese, I mean, doesn't know the legal terms, they're not a lawyer, right? But what are some things that document crunch helps with specifically?
yeah, I think with like these big contracts, the important information is going to be like understanding your notice provisions. What are they? Like how many or what types of notices are there on that type of project? How often or how much time do you have to notify certain people in order to, not forfeit your right to collect more money if it's a change order or extend the project schedule if it, is a change that has an impact on schedule. Um, so notices is certainly a big thing. But I think it's like just understanding the unique rules of like how to play the game of the the construction project or the project itself, right? Because there are all these different rules of what you can and can't do with change orders.
Right.
Um, there are all these different things that you can and can't do with contingency and how you can spend contingency, how you can use your allowances, right? And if you're a project manager, you don't fully understand, how to play the game by the rules. Um, as a contractor, you're not really like setting up that person for success to drive a very well, number one, a safe project, but a profitable project, right? If you're not playing by the rules. Um, so I think that those are some of the things. So understanding change orders, understanding your notice provisions, understanding your progress payments and final payments. When can you collect on final payments? Those are all things to understand, and it's written in the contract, but it's hidden in the contract through all that
Right.
legalese.
So, run somebody through it. So with the project manager had the ability to search the document, right? You would use document crunch to type it in there, change orders, and document crunch would bring up everything about change orders. How does that work for the PMs on the job?
Yeah, so we have what we call a playbook, but it's essentially like the cliff notes of the project. So essentially, a project manager would upload their executed contract, but it's not just their contract. They can actually upload their specifications, their scope of work, their subcontract agreements, right? Like everything about the contract, they could compile into one document and upload into Document Crunch to start, interacting with it. Um, but we have a playbook, which is basically the cliff notes of that unique project, right? So automatically and through our like generative AI, we are summarizing the key things that every project manager needs to understand in order to drive a safe and profitable job. So it's some of those things that I listed,
Right.
right? So notices, change orders, allowances, etc. Um, but it is an interactive platform. So one of the cool things that you can do with it is you can ask the contract any question and it's going to answer it, and find the
Wow.
information for you. Yeah.
Now, is it document crunch more suited for the big GCs, a little GC? Tell maybe what are some ways that document crunch can help a smaller contractor?
Well, I would say like it's for everybody in this industry. Like we're called contractors. Like we deal with a lot of contracts. And even if you're a small general contractor and you're only doing 20, $30 million worth of work every year, you're still dealing with a lot of contracts with your owners. You're still issuing a lot of contracts to your subcontractors. So I would say it's a wide range, of different builders and contractors that this platform, could be used. I'd say like for the big general contractors, this comes in handy for elevating everybody's game and understanding risky legalese. And I would view this as like a risk management tool for the projects.
Wow.
After it's been, after the contract has been executed. Certainly can help those companies better understand the risk, and evaluate the risk even before it's an active project, right? So at the opportunity stage, there's several contractors that will, look at our tool specifically for this opportunity stage, right? Determining whether, a project is the right project for their company or not, right? So it's that go, no go situation where, a contractor, is taking a look at like a big RFP package, and before they dedicate a bunch of resources to it to build out that bid, they need to understand if there are any deal breakers within that contract. Is this a good contract for, us as an organization? Some of those questions look very different depending on who you are. Um, so using this tool to evaluate the opportunities at scale, right? Because that seems to be like the big problem right now. There's a lot of work that's out there, but it's determining like which projects are best for your company. And you certainly can leverage Document Crunch to do that at scale.
Uh, do you have any success stories maybe when you had somebody that was a little on the fence about using Document Crunch and then decided to go for it, and then they were able to give you some feedback about how it helped their business?
Yeah, I'd say like the cool thing that I've noticed since I've been at Document Crunch is that um, all of our customers are very excited about our platform, and love talking about using our platform, which has been incredibly motivating, like for me to see that, and seeing like how we're making a big difference in their day to day, and really like, helping the industry, move towards this more like, um, contract conscious culture, if you will, and driving that across, contractors all over the country. We're working with over 250 contractors across the country, so general contractors and trade contractors. Oftentimes I'll hear, especially on the review side, when they're reviewing contracts up front, that it's eliminating, 70 to 80% of the work that they had to do previously to review these contracts. Um, it's pretty amazing to hear stories from general contractors in the area, in the Massachusetts area, like Commodore and Bond Brothers, and how their project teams and even superintendents are using this to answer questions about scope of work in real time in the fields via our Procore integration. Um, so yeah, I'm trying to think of like specifically, a contractor that I can name drop.
And you
But
don't have to name
whenever,
drop. You don't have to name drop if you
yeah,
want. I mean, if you could think of a specific time when, someone was like, "Nah, I'm not sure if this is any good," and then they were like, "Holy, this has been amazing!" Like my PMs, were able to, catch something or prevent something from happening. Or, I mean, is it an app based or is it web based?
yeah, it's a web-based platform, and I should have mentioned that at the very beginning of this. It's a web-based platform that kind of looks and feels like Box or Dropbox, where you can store all of your contracts. And the tool is very, very simple. You're simply uploading your contract as a document, so a Word document or a PDF. Um, And then once you've uploaded it, and we call it crunch, once you've crunched the document, then you can start interacting with it. And it's going to, number one, it's going to identify, all the risky language or all the language in the contracts that relate back to the top 45 main provisions, right? So things like indemnification, a waivers of consequential damages, liquidated damages, payment terms, progress payments, all of these things, all these different provisions that are common within the industry are riddled throughout the contract, but they don't really make it easy on contractors and put all of these provisions in a single spot,
Right.
right? It's not easy to identify all of the indemnification clauses within a contract like, that's a couple hundred pages long. And that the process for doing so today, prior to document crunch, is simply printing out the contract or having a contract, in Bluebeam or something and just reading it,
Yep.
page by page.
Does
Um,
does
yeah.
I mean, because I don't know any better because I'm not a project manager, but does, if I was the GC and I was putting contracts on there, does like I wouldn't want my PMs to see dollar amounts, like how much we won for the contract or how much the job was awarded for, right? Is there ability to hide all that stuff on there or not to show anybody that?
Well, there certainly are permission levels of who can see what types of contracts. But I'd say for, as like a former PM,
Right.
I'm gonna know these dollar amounts, right?
Okay.
I'm gonna know what the project award was. I'm managing that budget throughout the life cycle of construction. So I'm gonna, it's not completely necessary for a contractor or an organization to hide that information. You know, or contractors want their PMs to fully understand the contract, right? They have to understand what is in the contract. In fact, a lot of construction executives that I talk to, this often comes up. Um, it's like, yeah, like the amount of times I've got to ask my project teams, like, did you read the contract after they come to me with a question? Um, it happens a lot, right? And that seemed to be like it's a very common question these executives are asking their teams. And that's where I see the biggest gap right now. The project managers who need to fully understand the contract inside and out, they need to know it better than, in-house counsel. If, it's a general contractor that
Right.
has in-house counsel, the PMs need to understand it better than them because they're the ones managing it from like a day-to-day perspective. And it's not their game. Like they're not lawyers, I've yet to meet a project manager that is also a part-time attorney.
Right. Now, because your background is in the PM side, do you wish that you had document crunch way back when you had started? Right.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'll say this often because it's true. The first week I got to document crunch, I felt like a kid in a candy store. Like I was just using it to like better understand a lot of these terms or terminology that I didn't fully understand when I was a PM. Um, and a lot of people think of it when they see it as like an educational tool for their
Yeah.
people, right? It really elevates everybody's game in understanding contractual obligations and really just like understanding like what they're signing up for. So, and I've thought about this a lot too. I don't know if I could go back to being a project manager without this
Right.
tool.
Right.
Like for real, it's such a time saver, not just on the contract side, but you got to think like, um, especially with your specifications that are a couple thousand pages long sometimes, and scope of work that's defined at every single subcontractor level. It's a lot of documentation
Yeah.
to go through. And when you're a project manager or superintendent on the job site, there are often going to be questions on a daily basis where you have to reference back to maybe not the contract, but the contract documents in some shape or form, like the specifications or the scope of work that was defined in some subcontract agreement. And when you have a tool where you can just ask it any question, right? In just plain English, right? And it gives you the answer and it references where in the contract or contract documents that's pulling that where it's pulling out that answer. That's the game changer.
I think that sounds amazing. That again, it's kind of a where we're going anyways, right? A lot of AI, it's kind of helping you do the job, be more efficient. Ryan, our friend from Document Crunch, Ryan, if anybody has any questions about Document Crunch or, any questions specifically about the platform, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, the best way to get a hold of me, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, or at least I try to be. So Ryan Gaiss. So just first and last name. My last name's unique enough where you should be able to find me. And then my email is just rgaiss@documentcrunch.com.
And we'll be sure to put the link in the video portion as well as the email somewhere on the bottom here, probably underneath my little finger here. But that is Ryan Gaiss, two-timer club. Congratulations, you made the two-timer club. Now comes my favorite part of the podcast. We already did the lightning round with him once, so I got to make sure I ask him different questions. But what would your talent be if you were a Miss or Mr. World? What would your talent be?
What would is it? Do I get to like make up a talent
Whatever you want.
or
You can do whatever you want.
okay? I'd say I'm very resourceful. I learn new things very quickly.
That's
I
great.
don't know.
What was the worst job you've ever had?
Worst job I've ever had. I was like a bar back. It wasn't the worst job ever. I learned a lot, but it was a dirty job, and that was a summer job when I was in college.
Oh man. What is your favorite time of the day and why?
Um, in the morning, we've got a 1-year-old dog now, and he's pretty amazing in the morning.
That's,
He's just very happy and he loves going for walks, so I'll take him for a walk first thing in the morning.
what did you have for breakfast this morning?
I had a salmon and egg sandwich.
Ooh,
Yeah,
salmon and egg sandwich.
yeah.
What's the weirdest food you've ever eaten?
The weirdest food I've ever eaten. Maybe like snails, escargot.
Escargot. Okay. What is your cell phone wallpaper right now?
It's my dog, Henry.
Right. See, Henry. It's a great name. Uh, let's see here. What is your best scar story?
Oh, okay. I've got a big scar on my knee. And it's when I was in the seventh grade. It was during the summer. And it was like the first time my parents like left the house, right? Like left us to be on our own, like no babysitter or anything like that. Um, and we decided to play like water balloon tag, which
Yep.
is exactly what you think it is. You fill up a
Yep.
bunch of water balloons and you just throw them at each other. And and I was running through our garage and slipped on the garage floor, cut my knee open on the garage like track door. My
Yep.
parents, were 30 minutes away or something. So, of course, they came home to me getting carted away like in an ambulance.
That's the
But my
best
knee
scar
is
story.
fine.
Yeah, that's the best
Yes,
scar
I
story right there. I'm sure your poor mother never left you alone after that. I'm sure.
she did.
She,
Yeah, but maybe like for another year. It had
yeah,
to like, yeah, it was put on pause for another year.
don't. It sounds like the day I left my kids alone. I said, "Don't touch the stove. Don't make anything on the stove." And I came home, and he had the electric grill out, and he was making grilled cheese sandwiches for him and all his friends at my house. So he said I couldn't turn the stove on, so he decided to use up a whole loaf of bread and make grilled cheese sandwiches for the entire night. That's a great. If you could choose any person from history to be your imaginary friend, who would it be and why? It's a good one.
It's a good one. I like Teddy Roosevelt.
Ooh,
I just think he's like a fascinating character, really interesting president. Loved nature, established the national parks and
yep,
everything. Like just
love
a
it.
really cool guy. Yeah.
Yep. Are you a good dancer?
Um, I wouldn't say I'm a good dancer. I am doing dance lessons though on
Oh,
this Saturday because
oh,
we're getting married in
oh.
March, and I obviously need some lessons. So I think right now I'd say no, but yeah, in a couple months I'd say hopefully yes.
What is the best dish you can cook?
Best dish I can cook. I make a mean burger.
Ooh. Like on
Yeah,
the grill or like on the stove?
on the grill.
On the
I can
grill?
do on the stove. It doesn't matter. It comes out really good every single time.
All right. And then we always ask this one too, is if you were there was gonna be a food fight at the Gaiss house tonight, what would be your weapon of choice? And you cannot
Weapon?
say, yeah, weapon of choice. And you can't say mashed potatoes.
Why can't I say that?
But that's what everybody would say. So we take that right off we take that off the menu. There's no mashed potatoes at
Okay.
the Gaiss house, but you could pick anything else. What would you pick?
Um, Weapon like a spatula to like flick the food. That's what I
Okay,
would do.
that's
Yeah.
fine. Yep.
Like a catapult
Would you
situation.
who would be the first person you'd fling the food at with your spatula?
Probably, well, my dog. I
Your
mean,
dog.
we've got a small family right now. We've got a
Yep.
dog and my fiance.
All
So,
right. So
I
your
think he
fiance's
would,
safe. Fiance's
yeah,
safe.
she's
She
safe.
was safe.
Yeah.
Safe. All right. All right.
Yeah.
That's our friend Ryan, guys, from Document Crunch. Ryan, thanks for coming on second time. If anybody's any questions about Document Crunch, we're going to put all the information in the underneath here. All the information you need to talk to Ryan will be underneath us. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate coming on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael.